The security alert cut through the quiet hum of the orbital station like a knife. Owen Fletcher looked up from the panel he was repairing, his wrench still in hand. Red lights pulsed along the corridor walls, and that meant something bad had happened. He tapped his communicator. "Fletcher here. What's going on?" Static crackled before a voice came through, tight with stress. "All personnel be advised. 3 Drav cubs are missing from family quarters. Lockdown protocols in effect. Report any sightings immediately." Owen's stomach dropped. Drav cubs. Missing. That was about as bad as it could get. He had been working on this station for 2 years now, always taking the night shifts because they paid better and because he liked the quiet. The research station orbited Draventis, home planet of the Drav, and it was supposed to be a symbol of cooperation between species. Humans, Drav, and a dozen other races all working together up here in the black. The Drav were impressive in a terrifying sort of way. Tall, covered in dark scales that looked like armor, with claws that could punch through steel if they wanted. They were apex predators on their world, and everyone knew it. But they were also surprisingly calm most of the time, professional and focused on their work. Their cubs, though. Owen had only seen them a few times, always from a distance. Chief Thorne, head of station security, had brought family up here 3 months ago, 3 little ones, barely knee-high, with oversized heads and stubby tails. They made chirping sounds that echoed through the halls sometimes, and now they were missing. Owen grabbed his toolkit and headed toward the nearest corridor junction. His communicator buzzed constantly with updates. Search teams were forming. Every section was being swept. Chief Thorne's voice came through once, speaking in the Drav language, but Owen didn't need a translation to hear the panic underneath. He understood that feeling. Cubs were everything to the Drav. They didn't have many children, and each one was precious beyond measure. Losing them would be devastating. It could even cause problems between species if anyone thought humans or other races were responsible. The corridors filled with personnel. Drav security officers moved in groups, their movements quick and precise despite their size. Other crew members pressed against walls to let them pass. Everyone looked worried. Owen found himself in a group being questioned by a Drav officer named Ridge. The questions were direct. Where had he been? What had he seen? Had he noticed anything unusual? "I was working in Section 7, lower level," Owen explained. "Fixing a coolant leak. I've been there for 4 hours. Didn't see or hear anything strange." Ridge made a note on his data pad. His scales were darker than most, almost black, and his eyes were the color of amber. "You work alone?" "Always do on night shift. Most of the station is sleeping. The cubs were last seen near Section 6, upper level. That's directly above where you were working." Owen nodded. "I can help search the lower levels if you want. I know all the maintenance tunnels and access points. Places most people don't go." Ridge considered this. "Do it. Report anything immediately. Do not approach the cubs if you find them. They are young, but still dangerous." "Understood." Owen split off from the group and headed deeper into the lower sections. These areas were all machinery and storage, kept dimmer to save power. His boots clanged on metal grating. Pipes hissed and hummed around him. He knew every inch of this place. He checked access panels and storage closets. He climbed down into the crawl spaces where power conduits ran. Nothing. Hours passed. His communicator kept updating him with the same news. No sign of the cubs. Search continuing. Chief Thorne was requesting permission to tear apart sections of the station if needed. Owen felt the tension building. This was becoming a crisis. If those cubs had somehow gotten into an airlock or a dangerous area, if something had happened to them, the consequences would be severe. He made his way to Section 8, the furthest section from family quarters. There was a small maintenance bay down here that he had claimed as his unofficial rest area. It was against regulations, but his supervisor looked the other way. Owen had set up a hammock between 2 support beams, brought down some blankets and personal items. On long shifts, he would take breaks there, maybe catch an hour of sleep if things were quiet. The bay was near the environmental processors, so it was always warm. Owen liked that. Growing up on a cold colony world had made him appreciate warmth. He approached the bay and immediately knew something was wrong. The door was open. He always closed it, always. Owen stepped inside carefully, one hand on his communicator. The lights were on their lowest setting, just enough to see by. His hammock hung crooked, one end pulled loose. His blankets were in a pile on the floor instead of folded where he left them. Someone or something had been here. He moved closer to the blanket pile, ready to call it in. Then the pile moved, just slightly, a small shift of fabric. Owen froze. His heart hammered in his chest. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and pulled back the top blanket. 3 pairs of eyes stared up at him. 3 small faces with scales that hadn't fully hardened yet. 3 drav cubs curled together in a tight ball, surrounded by his clothes and bedding. They had found his rest area. They had made a nest out of his things, and now they were looking at him with curious, sleepy eyes. Owen's hand moved toward his communicator in slow motion. He didn't want to startle them. Everyone said drav cubs were dangerous, that their instincts were still wild, that those little claws and teeth could do real damage, but they just looked so small, so peaceful, like they had been sleeping hard and didn't want to be bothered. One of them, the smallest with lighter scales, made a soft chirping sound. Then it crawled out of the blanket nest, moving toward Owen on unsteady legs. The other 2 followed, their stubby tails dragging behind them. Owen held perfectly still as 3 predator cubs climbed onto his boots, his legs, making their way up to his lap like he was a piece of furniture. They were warm and surprisingly heavy. Their scales felt smooth under his hands when they pressed against him. They were purring. He could feel the vibration through his whole body. Content little rumbles that said they felt safe. Owen finally managed to tap his communicator with 1 finger, trying not to disturb the cubs now piled on top of him. Fletcher to security. I found them. Section 8, Maintenance Bay 12. They're safe. They're with me, and you're not going to believe this. Security arrived like a storm. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor, and Owen could hear Chief Thorne's voice barking orders even before the team reached the maintenance bay. He sat very still with 3 cubs draped across his lap and chest, trying not to think about how sharp those little claws felt through his uniform. The door burst open. Chief Thorne filled the doorway, massive even by drav standards, scales the color of old iron. Behind came Ridge and 4 other security officers, all armed, all ready for anything. They stopped dead when they saw the scene. Owen raised 1 hand slowly in a small wave. Hey, found them. They're okay. Chief Thorne moved forward, each step careful and controlled. His amber eyes were locked on the cubs, scanning them for injuries. When he spoke, his voice came out rough. They are unharmed? Yeah, they were sleeping when I got here. Made a nest out of my blankets. One of the cubs, the medium-sized one with a scar already forming on its snout, looked up at its parent and chirped, but it didn't move from Owen's lap. Just made the sound and settled back down, pressing its warm body against Owen's stomach. Chief Thorne knelt down slowly, extending 1 clawed hand toward his children. Skit, Fang, Little Terror, come. The cubs looked at their parent. They chirped again, but none of them moved toward Thorne. Instead, the smallest one, Skit, burrowed deeper into Owen's jacket. Something like confusion crossed Thorne's face. He tried again, speaking in the drav language this time, his voice taking on tones that Owen's ears couldn't quite process. The cubs responded with their own chirps but still refused to leave Owen. I don't understand, Thorne said finally, switching back to common language. They should come to me. Cubs always return to their parent when called. Ridge stepped closer, his scanner out. No signs of coercion or distress. Heart rates are normal. Actually, they're calmer than they've been since arriving on station. That can't be right, another officer said. Run it again, Ridge did. The results were the same. The cubs were completely relaxed, their stress hormones at the lowest levels recorded since the family came aboard. Owen shifted slightly, trying to find a more comfortable position without disturbing the cubs. Little Terror, the one on his chest, made a disgruntled sound and readjusted, tiny claws pricking through the fabric. They showed up on their own. I didn't do anything. Just found them here in my rest area. Your rest area. Thorne looked around the small bay, taking in the hammock, the personal items, the makeshift comfort Owen had created. This is not authorized quarters. No, sir, I know. I just needed somewhere to take breaks during long shifts. It's warm down here because of the processors. Thorne's eyes narrowed slightly. Warm. Yeah, is that important? Instead of answering, Thorne tapped his communicator. Get Dr. Yenna down here now. They waited in awkward silence. Owen tried twice to shift the cubs off his lap so he could stand up properly, but each time they made distressed sounds and clung tighter. Their claws, even as small as they were, could definitely do damage if they wanted. He decided staying still was the better option. Dr. Yenna arrived 10 minutes later, moving fast for a Pleiadian. She was small, barely reaching Owen's shoulder, with skin that shifted colors based on her mood. Right now it was cycling through curious blues and greens. "Show me," she said immediately. Ridge handed over his scanner data. Yenna studied it, her large eyes moving rapidly. Then she looked at the cubs, at Owen, at the maintenance bay. Her skin shifted to bright yellow. "Oh," she said. "Oh, this makes sense." "Explain," Thorne demanded. Yenna crouched down near Owen, close enough that he could smell something like cinnamon coming from her skin. She held up her scanner toward the cubs, taking readings. "May I?" she asked Owen. "May you what?" "Touch one of the cubs, just to check something." Owen looked at Thorne, who gave a sharp nod. "Okay, I guess." Yenna reached out slowly and placed one small hand on Fang's back. She held it there for a moment, then pulled back and checked her scanner. Her skin went even brighter yellow, almost gold. "Chief Thorne, what is the temperature in your family quarters?" Thorne's head tilted slightly. "Standard Drav environmental settings. 18 degrees. And the humidity?" 40%. "And the surfaces?" "The sleeping area, regulation station furniture, metal and composite materials." Yenna stood up, holding her scanner so everyone could see the display. "This bay is currently 24 degrees. Humidity is at 65%. And look at what the human has here. Soft materials, fabric, insulation. He's created a nest environment." "I don't follow," Owen said. "Drav cubs in the wild nest with their parents." "Yes," Yenna explained, her voice taking on a lecture tone. "But they also seek out specific environmental conditions. Warmth, humidity, soft surfaces where their undeveloped scales won't get damaged. Adult Drav prefer cooler, drier conditions. But cubs need something different." Thorne was very still. "We have raised cubs on stations before." "And how did they do?" "Really?" The big Drav didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was quieter. "They struggled. Slow development. Health issues. We thought it was the artificial gravity or the recycled air. It might have been the environment," Yenna said gently. "Look at your cubs now. Look at how calm they are. This human accidentally created better conditions than your quarters provide." Owen felt all eyes turn to him. He held up his hands, or tried to, but Skit was holding one of his fingers in her small claws. "I really didn't mean to. I just like it warm. Human body temperature is higher than most species," Yenna continued. "You also produce certain pheromones that signal safety to many young creatures across different species. It's not intentional. It's just biology." Little Terror chose that moment to yawn, showing rows of tiny but very sharp teeth. Then she nestled her head under Owen's chin and went back to sleep. "So what do we do?" Ridge asked. "We can't leave the cubs with a human maintenance worker." "Why not?" Yenna asked. "Temporarily, at least, until we can modify the family quarters to provide proper nesting conditions." "Chief Thorne, your cubs haven't slept this well in weeks, have they?" Thorne's silence was answer enough. Owen looked down at the 3 small creatures piled on him. They were heavy and warm, and their claws were definitely going to leave marks on his uniform. But they also felt trusting in a way that made his chest tight. "I don't know anything about taking care of Drav cubs," he said. "Then I will teach you," Thorne replied. He didn't sound happy about it, but there was something else in his voice too. Maybe relief, maybe hope, if you are willing. Owen thought about his quiet night shifts, his solitary maintenance work, his hammock in an empty bay. He thought about how the cubs felt when they purred, the vibration going through his whole body. "Yeah," he said. "Yeah, I'm willing." Owen's life changed overnight, and not in ways he expected. The station commander approved a temporary arrangement after Dr. Yenna submitted her findings. The cubs could stay with Owen during rest periods, and Chief Thorne would handle all other care and feeding. It was weird. It was unprecedented, but it was working. 3 days in, Owen was learning just how much energy 3 small predators could have. "No, Fang, that cable is not a toy," Owen said for the 5th time that hour. He was trying to replace a burnt-out relay in Section 9, while 3 cubs explored every corner of the workspace. Fang, the middle cub with the scarred snout, had discovered that fiber optic cables made interesting sounds when you bit them. Skit, the smallest, was currently trying to climb up Owen's leg, Her claws, even through his work pants, felt like needles. Little Terror was investigating Owen's toolkit, knocking tools onto the floor one by one and chirping happily each time something clanged. "This is impossible," Owen muttered. "How does anyone get work done?" His communicator buzzed. Chief Thorne's voice came through. "Fletcher, status report, they're alive." "I'm alive. The station is mostly intact." A sound that might have been a laugh came through the speaker. Over the past few days, Owen had learned that Thorne had a sense of humor, buried under all that military bearing. "Bring them to medical bay. Time for their afternoon feeding. Copy that. Come on, you three. Food time." The word food made all three cubs stop what they were doing. Their heads swiveled toward Owen in perfect sync. Then they were moving, scrambling over each other to reach him first. Owen scooped them up, one under each arm and Skit riding on his shoulder, and headed for medical. The walks through the station had become routine. At first, other crew members would stop and stare. Some kept their distance, nervous around the cubs. But after a few days, people started to relax. The cubs were curious about everything and everyone, but they never showed aggression. When a new person approached, they would hide behind Owen's legs and peek out, chirping softly. They trusted him completely. It was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. Medical Bay was on the upper level, bright and clean. Dr. Yenna had set up a corner specifically for the cubs with soft mats and feeding stations. Chief Thorne was already there, preparing 3 bowls of something that looked like raw meat mixed with supplements. The cubs saw their parent and chirped excitedly, but they didn't leave Owen's side until he walked over and set them down near the food. Even then, Skit kept one small hand wrapped around Owen's finger. "They're eating better," Thorne observed. "More than they have since we arrived." "They're sleeping better too," Owen said. "Last night they slept for 6 hours straight. I actually got to finish my entire shift without interruption." Yenna looked up from her datapad, her skin shifting to pleased green. "Excellent. Their scales are developing properly now too. See here?" She pointed at Little Terror's back where the scales were starting to harden and take on a darker color. "This should have happened weeks ago. So it really was just the environment?" Owen asked. "Environment, yes, but also something else." Yenna pulled up readings on her screen. "I've been monitoring stress hormones in all of you. The cubs' levels drop significantly when you're present, but so do yours," Owen blinked. "Mine?" "You've been lonely," Yenna said simply. "The data doesn't lie. You work alone, sleep alone, eat alone. Since the cubs came into your care, your cortisol levels have normalized. You're sleeping better, even eating more regularly." Owen felt his face heat up. He hadn't realized it was that obvious. "I like the quiet. Humans are social creatures," Thorne said, watching his cubs eat. "It is not weakness to need companionship," says the guy who works in security and is surrounded by people all day. "I also have 3 cubs who, until 3 days ago, barely slept and cried constantly." Thorne's eyes met Owen's. "You have given them something I could not." "That is difficult to accept." The honesty in those words hit Owen hard. "You're their parent. I'm just the warm spot they like to sleep on. Perhaps." Thorne set down the feeding bowl he was cleaning. "But perhaps you are more. Drav culture has a word, kreshtar. It means one who guards the nest. Not a parent, but one who protects and nurtures when the parent cannot be present. I'm not sure I qualify for that." "My cubs disagree." Little Terror, finished with her food, waddled over to Owen and headbutted his shin. It was gentle, almost careful, but it still nearly knocked him off balance. She looked up at him and chirped, her amber eyes bright. Owen reached down and scratched behind her head ridges where Thorne had shown him the cubs liked it. Little Terror's purr rattled through the floor. Over the next week, the pattern continued. Owen worked with 3 small shadows following him everywhere. Chief Thorne taught him proper care techniques during feeding times. Dr. Yenna monitored everyone's health and declared the arrangement a complete success. Other things changed too. Owen started eating in the main cafeteria instead of alone in his bay. The cubs attracted attention, and attention meant conversation. He met people he had only known by voice over the comm system. A human engineer named Riley started joining him for meals, fascinated by the cubs. A Pleiadian botanist taught Owen about plants that could make the air in his bay even better for the cubs. He was making friends. Actual friends. Because of 3 small predators who had decided he was trustworthy. But the cubs were growing fast. Each day they got a little bigger, a little heavier, a little stronger. Their play became rougher. Owen started showing up to shifts with scratches on his arms that no amount of careful trimming could prevent. The cubs didn't mean to hurt him. They were just becoming what they were meant to be. One night during a rest period in his bay, Owen watched the cubs sleep in their nest of blankets. They were piled together like always, but now they barely fit in the space. Fang's tail hung over the edge. Little Terror's head rested on Skit's back. They would outgrow this arrangement soon. They would need to be with their parent full-time, learning how to be proper Drav. And Owen would go back to his quiet maintenance work, his solitary shifts. The thought made his chest ache in a way he didn't expect. His communicator buzzed softly. A message from Chief Thorne appeared on the screen. Family quarters redesign is approved. Construction begins tomorrow. We will need your input on environmental specifications. Also, the cubs will always know who kept them safe. As will I. Thank you, Kreshitar. Owen read the message 3 times. Then he looked at the sleeping cubs, at the small family he had accidentally found in the dark corners of a space station, and smiled. Tomorrow they would start building something better. But tonight he had this moment. 3 predators trusting a human completely. It was enough. The construction crew arrived at 0600 hours, and the cubs did not appreciate the noise. Owen woke to the sound of angry chirping and the feeling of small claws digging into his shoulders as all 3 cubs tried to climb on his head at once. Okay, I hear it too, he groaned, carefully extracting Skit from his hair. It's just construction. Nothing scary, the cubs disagreed. They huddled against him, making distressed sounds as hammering and drilling echoed through the station walls. Chief Thorne's family quarters were 2 sections over, close enough that the renovation noise carried through the ventilation system. Owen's communicator buzzed. Thorne's message was brief. Cubs? Scared but okay. The noise is spooking them. Keep them with you today. I will handle the construction oversight. So Owen's shift started with 3 anxious cubs clinging to him while he tried to work. It went about as well as expected. Every loud noise sent them scrambling. Fang tried to attack a pipe wrench at one point, convinced it was threatening them. Little Terror refused to let go of Owen's leg for 2 straight hours. Only Skit seemed interested in what was happening. She kept tilting her head toward the construction sounds, her small ear ridges twitching. When Owen had to go check a relay near the construction site, Skit followed him instead of hiding with her siblings. The family quarters section was chaos. Walls were being torn down to create a larger space. Workers were installing new environmental controls. A team was building what looked like a raised platform with soft padding. Riley, the engineer Owen had been eating lunch with, spotted him and waved. Hey, come look at this. Owen approached, Skit riding on his shoulder. The other 2 cubs had finally been coaxed into following, staying close to his legs. Dr. Yenna designed this based on your maintenance bay, Riley explained, showing Owen the plans on her datapad. See multiple temperature zones. The sleeping platform has heating elements underneath. Humidity controls are independent from the rest of the quarters, and all the surfaces where the cubs will spend time are covered in this special composite. It's soft enough for developing scales but tough enough to handle adult Drav. This is incredible, Owen said, studying the design. Must be costing a fortune. Station commander approved the full budget. Apparently word got back to the Drav homeworld about what happened with the cubs. They're calling it breakthrough research in environmental adaptation. This station might become the standard for how all ships and stations handle Drav families. Skit climbed down from Owen's shoulder and onto the edge of the construction site. She sniffed at a piece of the soft composite material, then sat down on it. Her purr started immediately. One of the Drav construction workers noticed. Little one likes it? Skit looked up at the worker and chirped. Then she did something Owen had never seen before. She walked over to the adult Drav and head-butted their leg, the same gesture of affection she showed Owen. The worker's eyes widened. They knelt down slowly and placed one large hand on Skit's back. Hello, small one. You are brave. Over the next hour, all 3 cubs warmed up to the construction crew. They investigated materials, got in the way of workers, and generally made nuisances of themselves. But everyone was patient with them. One Pleiadian worker started making chirping sounds that the cubs found hilarious. A human carpenter showed Fang how to safely handle tools. Owen watched it happen with mixed feelings. The cubs were comfortable with others now. They didn't need him hovering all the time. That was good. That was progress, so why did it make him feel hollow? They're growing up, Riley said quietly, standing next to him. That's hard. I've only known them for 2 weeks. Doesn't matter. You helped raise them. That creates a bond. Owen didn't trust himself to answer. He just nodded. The construction took 3 days. During that time, the Cubs split their time between Owen's maintenance bay and the worksite, getting used to their new home. Chief Thorne spent hours teaching them about their space, showing them where everything was, establishing routines. On the 3rd night, Thorne invited Owen to see the finished quarters. Owen came after his shift, exhausted and covered in grease from a coolant system repair. The Cubs met him at the door, chirping excitedly and dragging him inside. The space was beautiful. Warm lighting created zones of brightness and shadow. The sleeping platform dominated one corner, already piled with soft materials. Plants that Dr. Yenna had selected for air quality grew in containers along the walls. Temperature varied by area, creating microclimates throughout the quarters. They will move here tomorrow, Thorne said. Full-time, that's good. This is perfect for them. You could stay, tonight, to help them adjust. Owen looked at the Cubs, who were already exploring their new space with enthusiasm. They seem like they're adjusting fine without me. Perhaps. But I think they would sleep better with you here. One last time, so Owen stayed. He helped Thorne settle the Cubs for sleep, following the routine they had developed. Food first, then playtime to burn off energy, then quiet time where they all piled together in the warm sleeping area. But tonight there was a difference. Chief Thorne lay down with them, his large body curving around his cubs. And Owen was there too, part of the family pile, with Skit's head on his chest and Fang's tail across his legs. This is strange, Owen said softly. Yes, Thorne agreed, but good. I thought Drav didn't do the whole pack bonding thing with other species. We don't, usually. Thorne was quiet for a moment. My mate died before these cubs hatched. I have been raising them alone. I thought I could provide everything they needed. I was wrong. You're a good parent. I am adequate. But I could not be Kreshtar as well. I could not be both protector and nurturer. You gave them something I could not. Little Terror made a sleepy sound and adjusted her position, one small hand curling around Owen's thumb. Her scales had hardened beautifully over the past 2 weeks, changing from soft gray to deep charcoal with hints of green. They're going to be amazing when they grow up, Owen said. They already are, because of you. Owen didn't know what to say to that, so he just lay there in the warm darkness, surrounded by a family that wasn't his by blood or even by species, and felt more at home than he had in years. Tomorrow things would change. The Cubs would live here full-time. Owen would go back to his maintenance bay and his quiet shifts. But tonight, for just a little longer, he was Kreshtar, guardian of the nest, part of something bigger than himself. The Cubs' purring filled the room like thunder. Owen closed his eyes and let the sound wash over him. Whatever came next, he had this moment. He had made a difference. That was enough. The Cubs had been in their new quarters for 5 days when Skit got sick. Owen was halfway through a repair job in Section 4 when his communicator went off. Chief Thorne's voice came through, tight with controlled panic. Fletcher, I need you. Now. Owen dropped his tools and ran. He found Thorne in the family quarters, standing over the sleeping platform where Skit lay curled in a ball. The little cub's scales had lost their shine. She was making small, pained sounds that cut right through Owen's chest. What happened? Owen asked, kneeling next to the platform. She would not eat this morning. Then she began making these sounds. Dr. Yenna is coming, but Skit will not let me touch her. Owen reached out slowly. Skit's eyes opened, dull and unfocused. She saw Owen and made a weak chirp. Then she was moving, crawling toward him despite clearly being in pain. Hey, little one, Owen said softly, gathering her into his arms. She was hot, much hotter than normal. What's wrong? Fang and Little Terror watched from the corner, silent and worried. Even they knew something was wrong with their sister. Dr. Yenna arrived minutes later with a full medical kit. Her skin was cycling through anxious colors, purples and dark blues. Move to the platform. I need to examine her. Owen sat on the edge of the platform, holding Skit against his chest. She had her face buried in his shirt, refusing to look at anyone else. Yenna approached carefully, scanner in hand. I need to see her, Yenna said gently. Owen tried to shift Skit, but the cub made a distressed sound and clung tighter. Her small claws punctured his shirt and scratched his skin underneath. She won't let go. Then hold her steady. I'll work around you. For the next 10 minutes, Yenna ran scans while Owen held a scared, sick cub who trusted him completely. Thorn paced nearby, his movements sharp and agitated. The other 2 cubs had crept closer, pressing against Owen's legs. Finally, Yenna put down her scanner. It's drav fever, common in cubs this age. Extremely uncomfortable, but not dangerous if treated properly. Thorn stopped pacing. You are certain? Yes, see the readings here? Elevated temperature, inflammation in the throat area, sensitivity to light and sound. Classic symptoms. She needs medicine and rest. The fever should break in 2 days. Give her the medicine, Thorn said immediately. That's the problem. Yenna pulled a small injector from her kit. This needs to be administered subcutaneously between the shoulder scales. But if she moves, I could hit the wrong spot. She needs to stay still. Sedate her. I'd rather not. Cubs this young don't always respond well to sedation. If she could just hold still on her own. Owen looked down at Skit, who was shaking in his arms. She won't hold still for you. She's too scared. No, Yenna agreed. But she might hold still for you. The room went quiet. Thorn's eyes were on Owen, intense and desperate. Please. Owen had never done anything medical in his life. He fixed machines, not living things. But Skit was looking at him with those dull eyes, trusting him completely. And he couldn't let her down. Tell me what to do. Yenna guided his hands, showing him exactly where to hold Skit, how to keep her steady. Talk to her. Keep her calm. When I say ready, press here gently to separate the scales. It will only hurt for a moment. Owen cradled Skit close, one hand on her back. Hey, little one. Remember when you first found me? You were so brave. You climbed right onto my lap like you owned the place. You're still that brave. I've got you. Nothing bad is going to happen. Skit made a small sound and pressed her face into his chest. Ready, Yenna said, injector in hand. Owen found the spot she had shown him and gently pressed. The scales separated just enough. Skit tensed, sensing something was about to happen. You're okay. Owen kept talking, his voice low and steady. I'm right here. Not going anywhere. You're safe. Yenna moved fast. The injector hissed. Skit yelped and her claws dug deep into Owen's chest, drawing blood. But she didn't thrash. Didn't try to escape. She just held onto Owen and made pained sounds while he whispered reassurances. Then it was done. Yenna pulled back. Perfect. The medicine is in. Skit was shaking harder now, her small body racked with shivers. Owen held her close, feeling his own shirt getting damp with blood from where her claws had gone through. The fever will get worse before it gets better, Yenna explained. She needs to stay hydrated and cool. Use damp cloths on her scales. Keep her comfortable. How long? Thorn asked. The fever peaks around 12 hours after the medicine. Then it should start dropping. By tomorrow evening, she'll be much better. Thorn moved to take his cub, but Skit made a sound of pure distress and clung to Owen even harder. Thorn's hands froze in the air. She wants you, he said quietly. I have a shift in 2 hours. Cancel it. Owen looked at Chief Thorn, head of security, one of the most respected drav on the station. He looked at Fang and Little Terror pressed against his legs. He looked at Dr. Yenna, her skin now shifting to hopeful green. Then he looked at Skit, sick and scared and trusting him completely. Okay, he said. I'll stay. The next 12 hours were brutal. Skit's fever spiked until her scales were almost too hot to touch. Owen sat on the sleeping platform holding her, using cool cloths the way Yenna had shown him. Thorn brought water and tried to get her to drink. The other cubs stayed close, their usual energy gone, replaced by quiet concern. Owen talked through all of it, told Skit stories about his childhood on the colony world, about his first day on the station, about the moment he found 3 cubs sleeping in his blankets and his whole life changed. Thorn listened too, sitting nearby, his massive frame hunched with worry. Sometimes he would add details about drav culture, teaching Owen words in their language, the word for family, the word for trust, the word for love that transcends blood. Somewhere around hour 10, Owen realized he was crying. Just tears running down his face while he held a sick cub and promised her everything would be okay. Why are you crying? Fang asked suddenly, using the basic common language he was learning. His voice was high and uncertain. Owen looked at the cub. Because I care about your sister. Because I care about all of you. You are not drav, Fang said, confused. No, but you're still my family. Thorn made a sound, low and rumbling. When Owen looked at him, the big drav's eyes were bright. Krishtar, he said, then added something in his own language that sounded important. What does that mean? Guardian of the nest who becomes family. There is no translation that captures it fully. At hour 12, Skit's fever broke. Her shaking stopped. Her scales cooled. She opened her eyes and they were clear again, bright with that sharp intelligence Owen had come to love. Hungry, she said in her small voice. Owen laughed, the sound coming out wet and broken. Yeah, I bet you are. Thorn brought food. Skit ate a little, then curled back up in Owen's arms and fell into real sleep, not the fever-induced unconsciousness from before. Her purr started up again, soft and steady. The other cubs climbed onto the platform, making a pile around Owen and their sister. Thorn sat next to them all, one large hand resting on Owen's shoulder. Thank you, Thorn said simply. Owen leaned back against the wall, exhausted and blood-stained and happier than he had been in years. That's what family does. 6 months passed like water through fingers. The cubs grew from knee-high to waist-high. Their scales hardened into proper armor. Their claws became weapons that could tear through metal. They were becoming what they were meant to be, and it was beautiful and terrifying to watch. Owen's maintenance bay stayed empty most nights now. He had moved some of his things into a small room adjacent to Thorn's family quarters, a space that somehow became his without anyone making it official. Station records still listed him in his old quarters. Nobody mentioned it. Nobody cared. The cubs still needed him, just in different ways. Skit would find him during his shifts to show him something she learned. Fang liked to spar with him, pulling his strikes so his claws only tapped instead of cut. Little Terror had developed a habit of sitting on his feet while he worked, her weight now enough to actually pin him in place. But they were also spending more time with other Drav, learning their culture and language. Chief Thorn was teaching them combat forms. Other Drav families had started visiting the station specifically to see the famous quarters that had solved the cub-raising problem. The cubs were polite with visitors, showing off their space and explaining in broken common language how the temperature zones worked. Owen watched it all from the edges, proud and sad in equal measure. This was what success looked like. The cubs were thriving. They didn't need him the way they used to. Then new arrivals came to the station, a Drav family with 2 young cubs, barely 3 months old. They moved into quarters 3 sections over, designed exactly like Thorn's based on Owen's accidental nest building. The new cubs cried constantly. Owen could hear them through the ventilation system during his shifts. Long, distressed sounds that set his teeth on edge and made his chest ache. 4 days after the family arrived, the father showed up at Owen's worksite. He was smaller than Thorn with lighter scales and tired eyes. You are Owen Fletcher? Yes, sir. Can I help you? My cubs will not settle. The quarters have everything they need, but they cry. The mother is exhausted. I am exhausted. We heard that you have experience with young ones. Owen set down his tools. I'm not sure what I can do that you can't. I don't know either, but I am desperate enough to ask. So Owen followed the father to the new family quarters. The space was identical to Thorn's, warm and humid with soft surfaces. The mother sat on the sleeping platform holding 2 crying cubs who were clearly making her miserable despite her best efforts. They smell wrong, she said when Owen entered. The quarters, the air, everything. It smells like station, not like home. Owen understood immediately. His maintenance bay hadn't just been warm and soft. It had smelled like him, like human, like something familiar and safe. These quarters were perfect on paper but sterile in practice. Can I try something? Owen asked. The parents exchanged glances, then nodded. Owen sat on the platform and held out his hands. The mother passed him one of the cubs, clearly skeptical. The cub was hot and upset, its scales rough with stress. Owen held the cub close and started talking quietly, the same way he used to talk to Skit and her siblings. Just simple words about nothing important. The cub's crying faded to confused chirps. Its small body relaxed slightly. Give me a blanket, Owen said. Something I can leave here. The father brought one. Owen wrapped himself and the cub in it, letting his scent soak into the fabric. The cub's eyes started to close. Its breathing evened out. By the time Owen left an hour later, both cubs were sleeping in the blanket he had scented, curled together on the platform. The parents looked at him like he had performed magic. How? The mother asked. I don't know. Dr. Yenna says it's pheromones or body temperature or something. I just know it works, word spread. Other families on the station started requesting what the crew called Owen's visits. He would spend time with cubs, letting them get used to his presence and scent. He would leave behind pieces of fabric that carried his smell. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it helped. Chief Thorne watched it happen with something like pride. You have become famous, he said one evening while they fed his cubs together. The cubs were big now, needing massive amounts of food. I don't want to be famous. I just want to help. You are helping. You are changing how my people think about raising cubs away from homeworld. Fang looked up from his food. Owen is ours, he said possessively. His common language had improved dramatically. Other cubs should find their own human. There are not enough humans for every drab family, Thorne said patiently. Then they should grow some. Owen laughed, despite himself. It doesn't work like that, buddy. But it turned out in a way it did. Station Command started a program pairing human volunteers with drab families who were struggling with cub care, not as primary caregivers, but as support, as crechetar, humans who were willing to spend time with cubs, provide that warm presence that seemed to help them thrive. Riley signed up immediately. So did 3 other maintenance workers and a botanist. Dr. Yenna published a paper on cross-species, child rearing that became required reading at every multi-species station in the sector. The small maintenance bay where 3 cubs had once nested became a memorial of sorts. Command cleaned it up but left it intact, turning it into a reminder that sometimes the most important discoveries happen by accident, that sometimes the best solutions come from kindness instead of planning. Owen still went there sometimes during his shifts. He would sit in the spot where he used to sleep and remember the weight of 3 small bodies piled on him. Those cubs were teenagers now in drav years, almost as big as their father. But sometimes when they thought he wasn't looking, they would still curl up next to him, still seek out that warmth and safety they first found in a human's accidental nest. One night, during a quiet moment in the family quarters, Skit sat next to Owen while her siblings wrestled across the room. She was almost his height now when she stood on her hind legs. Her scales were beautiful, deep green-black with hints of silver. Did you know? She asked suddenly. When you found us, did you know what would happen? No, I was just scared and trying not to mess up. But you stayed. Even when we grew bigger. Even when we got difficult. You were never difficult. Well, maybe a little. Skit made a sound that was almost a laugh. Father says you gave us more than warmth. You gave us proof that different species can be family. Owen looked across the room at Thorne, who was pretending not to listen while he supervised the wrestling match. At Fang and Little Terror, who had both grown into their names. At this space that had been built because 3 cubs needed somewhere safe to sleep. You gave me proof of that too, Owen said quietly. Years would pass. The cubs would grow into adults, would eventually leave the station for their own lives. Other cubs would come, would be helped by humans who learned to be Kreshtar. The program would spread to other stations, other worlds. But it all started here, in a maintenance bay where a lonely human had made a warm nest without knowing anyone needed it. Where 3 predator cubs had found a protector who didn't share their species, but shared something more important, love that transcended biology, trust that ignored instinct, family that had nothing to do with blood and everything to do with choice. Owen Fletcher had come to this station 2 years ago, looking for quiet and solitude. Instead, he found 3 cubs sleeping in his blankets and discovered that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never planned for. Sometimes being needed is better than being alone. Sometimes family finds you in the strangest places, and all you have to do is be warm enough to let them stay. The station hummed around them, a little warmer than regulations required, filled with the sounds of cubs learning to be themselves. And in the middle of it all, a human maintenance worker sat with his found family and knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be.